Hey, this is Bert Salazar, and I'm hoping that all of you are doing well today. After 30 years in the financial services industry, being a retirement strategist and a tax planner, my number one job in the world is to save my clients from themselves. In other words, saving you from yourself. And I do that on an ongoing basis because the vast majority of the clients that I meet for the first time, they actually come from a different world. They come from a world in which they have been dealing with financial advisors for many, many years. Most of those financial advisors are selling a specific product or representing a specific company, but very few of them actually have a holistic approach to management, to the management of retirement assets and to the management of clients' goals, needs, and objectives on an ongoing basis. And that's something very important and very sad from a business perspective, because when these clients come to see me for the first time, they're totally lost. One of the questions that I often get from my clients, and I'm going to talk about 3 cases that I'm now working on, and specifically, but one of the questions that I get asked most often from my clients, especially the new ones, is, Bert, I'm going to be retiring the next 3 months, 6 months, and the next year. Am I ready to do so? Am I ready to embark upon my retirement life? Am I going to be successful? Am I going to be a failure? Have I done everything correct? How many mistakes have I made? And if I have made mistakes, do I still have the opportunity and the time to fix them? So, those are very viable questions. The sad thing about that is that most of those questions are answered when they come to see me for the first time. Now, because my business is a virtual business, all of my contacts with my clients are online through video conferences like, this video that I'm producing for you today. Because at the end of the day, I have the ability to oversee and manage clients all throughout the United States. And that's something that myself and my firm are very proud of, because we have actually embarked to doing specifically that about 5 years ago when we decided to go virtually from a business perspective. Now, there are 3 clients that are, 2 of them are seeing me on Thursday of this week, and then the other one is seeing me next week. And when they schedule a visit with me, I normally take 20 minutes, to get to know them a little bit better. But because of the fact that they were so close to retirement, 2 of the clients are going to be retiring at the beginning of the year. And then another one of the clients, I'm talking about husband and wives, they're going to be retiring sometime in June or early July. So because of the fact that they're so close to retirement, I wanted to spend a little bit more time in preparation for a first meeting. Now, obviously, they needed to send me a lot of that information. They needed to upload the information to our site in order for me to be able to have a good conversation with them and put together the tactical retirement blueprint that we do with each and every one of our clients. What was really sad about these 3 conversations that I have with these clients, and also just about every client that I have this type of conversation with. Now, once they've been working with me in my firm for a while, things have a tendency to go seamless, because we're attacking each and every one of the issues that we need to address on an ongoing basis and also on a regular basis in order to maximize the opportunities for them and for their families and even for their businesses from that point of view. So the tactical retirement blueprint that I put together for clients, either my new clients, which we do reviews on an ongoing basis, or for new clients who are joining our platinum group for the first time, is I go through a set of questions. Now, there are a lot of questions that I asked, and I'm going to go through some of them with you, but I don't need to have them in writing, although I do. We have a checklist that we use here in our firm, but I've been doing it for so long that I have it all memorized from a business standpoint. So whenever we get into a discussion as to, Bert, am I ready for retirement? There are 4 major areas that we look at very closely, because our tactical retirement blueprint focuses primarily on risk management from a retirement standpoint. And that's important, because if you can manage the potential risks that your retirement life is going to be facing, obviously, if you can manage that, the better prepared you're going to be, and you're not going to find yourself in situations where, I wasn't really planning for this, and all of a sudden it's here. What do I do now? Because you'll have a blueprint in which to be able to move through, and all of these questions, for the most part, are going to be addressed, answered, and taken care of for you. So now the 4 areas of the risk management that we look at, and many of you that have listened to my videos, or you listen to my podcast, or you watch my videos, you know that whenever we do a tactical retirement blueprint, we look at the 4 major risks, or the fatal 4, as I call them, that is going to have an effect, either a positive or a negative effect on each and every one of the retirees that we deal with and that we manage. Number 1, there is the risk of dying too soon. Number 2 is the risk of living too long. Number 3 is managing the risk of living with a disability. And last but not least, number 4 is managing the risk of eroding factors. So when clients again ask me, Bert, am I ready for retirement? Am I going to be okay? Is my family going to be okay? We actually go through each and every one of these risk management approaches in order to determine their viability of retirement and what they need to do in order to mitigate any types of issues that they may be facing at the time that we put together the tactical retirement blueprint. So when we get into the area of the risk of dying too soon, I can tell you from personal experience, after 30 years in the financial services industry, that no one ever dies at the right time. I have had clients that have died in their late 30s, early 40s. I have had clients that have died in their 90s. What I can tell you, and this is regardless whether you die at a young age, or you die at an average age, or you average age, or you die at an age that is late in life, no one ever dies at the right time. There's always something left to be done. Timing is everything in life, but my experience tells me that no one will ever die at the right time. The second thing is that I have never met a widow that did not believe in life insurance, because many a times that is one of the major areas that most retirees need to focus on if you want to make certain that they're not going to be disinheriting their families upon an early death. So what are some of the questions that need to be answered that all of you need to consider prior to choosing retirement? Are you married? Are you single? Do you have younger children that you're still taking care of? Perhaps you started a family later in life. How are your finances? What would happen if you don't wake up tomorrow morning? What financial impact you not being here will have on your immediate family, meaning your surviving spouse and or your children, if you have any. Do you have enough assets to make certain that upon your demise, that your family is going to be protected, that your family is going to be able to maintain their standard of living, or at least the standard of living that you have given them from that perspective? And what kind of assets do you have to mitigate that? Do you have life insurance? Do you rent it, or do you own it? And if you rent it, how much of a lease agreement do you have on that life insurance contract? Is that life insurance policy going to die before you do? And if it does, do you have the ability to replace it? Are you going to be in enough of a good health status in order to be able to replace that contract at some point in time in the future? What kind of calculations, if you do own life insurance, what kind of calculations did you use in order to determine the amount of death benefit that you have on your side of the ledger. If you have not done any type of calculations, what kind of product do you have? Is it a term? Is it a permanent product? What kind of a permanent product is it? Does it have any additional funding that is required after, some kind of an illness? Do you have any type of disability coverage? Does it provide for long-term care benefits? And if it doesn't do that, then obviously we'll talk a little bit about that in the next few minutes, but what impact is that going to have on your family? So most of the clients that I visit with for the first time, when I start going down the line on all of those questions, just in the area of dying too soon or having a premature death, I would argue that over 90% of the clients that I engage for the first time are not prepared for retirement at that point in time. Now, when I ask a client, listen, are you okay with disinheriting your family at some point in time in the future? If the answer is, yeah, it's okay, my wife can, get another husband or she can find a job, then that would be the end of the conversation, because after 30 years in my practice and being as successful as I have been doing so, I have earned the right to only do business with people that I know, like, and trust. So if I have a situation like that, I close my books. I say, thank you very much. Please go find somebody else, because I'm definitely not the advisor for you. So if you're not thinking about your family, if you're not thinking about the due diligence that you need to provide for yourself in order to protect them, then obviously you're not the type of person that I want to be able to deal with and that I want to deal with in the future. Now, there are a lot of other questions that I asked along those lines in the area of dying too soon, but I just wanted to give you a preamble of that, because it's important that you understand that no one ever dies at the right time. Now, the second area of risk management that we do under our tactical retirement blueprint has nothing to do with the risk of dying too soon, but it has to do with the risk of living too long. See, Americans are living a lot longer today than ever before. As a matter of fact, whenever I do any type of tactical retirement blueprint for a client, I'm always considering a 30-year retirement. And those are the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. So those 3 decades in retirement are very important for me to be able to plan out on behalf of my clients, because I don't want my clients to run out of money before they run out of life. Now, I can tell you this for a fact. Most of you watching this video today, most of you are going to run out of money before you run out of life, and that's going to make it a very horrible no-go years or the last decade in your personal and family life. So unless you do something about that, then chances are you're going to suffer inevitably at some point in time in the future. Now, what are some of the areas that I pay attention to in the questions that I ask when it comes to the risk of living too long? What kind of assets do you have? How much do you have of those assets? When are you planning to retire? Why are you retiring at that age? Some of you may want to retire at 60, some others at 62, 65, 67, some at age 70. Many of you may not want to retire, or you may just want to semi-retire because you want to continue to be fruitful, to be generating income and revenues, whether it is through a side business or working part-time or whatever it may be. So every person is a different world, and I need to be able to do the planning according to those goals and objectives for the specific clients. But having assets, where's the income going to come from? How much are you thinking about generating an income? What kind of a standard of living do you want to provide for yourself and your family? Are you there now? Because I always say that luxury, once enjoyed, becomes a necessity. So if you're living at this level of standard of living, and all of a sudden you go into retirement, and from one day to the next, you go from this level to this level, more than likely you're not going to enjoy it. More than likely you're not going to want to do that. So the number one goal is, what kind of a standard of living do you have today? and how can we keep it going for the rest of your life? Where are your assets invested? What kind of risk are you taking on your assets? Are your assets protected? That'll come into the other conversation that I'll have with you in the next couple of minutes. But having a clear understanding, are your assets, have you done asset allocation? And many times the client says, yes, Bert, I do asset allocation every year. I said, okay. If you do asset allocation every year, do you do tax allocation? Are your assets in the taxable bucket, the tax deferred bucket, the tax-free bucket, a combination of all three? What percentages, what models, what kind of a risk taker are you? So these are questions that need to be answered before you make a decision whether to retire or not, along with the questions regarding the risk of a premature death or dying too soon. The third area of risk management that our tactical retirement blueprint works on is the area of living with a disability. See, the fact that people are living so much longer today than ever before, and what used to kill us 30, 40, 50 years ago is no longer doing that. That's a good thing, but on the other side, it may leave us disabled. So that means that if you're a husband and wife today, there's a 70% probability that one of you is going to have a long-term care illness at some point in time in the future. That's an enormous number, because if the probabilities of a disability in retirement is 70%, it's going to necessitate a tremendous amount of assets in order to cover those additional expenses. And then obviously, have you been able to protect for that liability as well? Most of the clients that I engage for the first time, the answer is no, they have not done anything along those lines. One of the challenging things with doing a tactical retirement blueprint for clients that are close to retirement is that many times, by the time I go through this entire spectrum and I address each and every one of those areas in the tactical retirement blueprint, once I input all their data into my calculations, most of the time the clients get really, really scared because they're not prepared. They're not prepared to retire next year. They're not prepared to retire in 3 years. Some of them are never going to be prepared to retire because financially they're not going to be able to afford it. Now, the sooner you get to start addressing these issues, the better off you're going to be in finding remedies that can help you minimize the liability while increasing the profitability in your retirement portfolio and the guarantees, so you don't run out of money before you run out of life. And there's a number of other questions that I ask along those lines, but those are questions that I feel are critical for all of you to at least take a look at today. So we've covered the risk of dying too soon. We've covered the risk of living too long. We've covered the risk of living with a disability, which is the one that we just talked about. And then last but not least is the risk of living with eroding factors. My definition of an eroding factor is anything that can erode the value of your assets and your financial life in retirement. So taxes, inflation, stock market volatility, interest rate volatility, propensity to consume, lawsuits. I have clients of mine that love to spend money. And no matter how much I tell them that, they need to set more and more money aside for retirement. Remember, when you're putting money away into retirement, it's a delayed expenditure because you're going to have that expenditure in the future anyways, but you are taking a smaller cut today so you can set that money away for retirement. Now, from a taxable standpoint, where do you think that taxes are going to be in the future? Where do you think your assets are going to be at from a taxable perspective? Are your assets all in the tax deferred bucket, which means that upon distribution, you're going to have to pay taxes at some point in time in the future, and you don't even know what tax rates are going to look like at that point in time? Are they all in the taxable bucket? And if they're in the taxable bucket and the tax deferred bucket, then you have no shelter. So as taxes increase in the future, then there's going to be a high probability that the amount of revenues or income that you're going to generate from those retirement accounts are not going to be enough once you pay taxes and you deal with inflation. Now that brings me into the inflation side of the equation. Inflation is everything is going to cost more in the future. At a 3% inflation rate, if something costs $1 today, it's going to be $1.03 next year, and then that will get compounded every year thereafter. The other thing you have to consider is that inflation is not tax deductible. So if inflation is at 3%, you got to earn above that and then pay taxes on that earning so you can have a net of your income plus inflation to at least be able to buy a loaf of bread in the future without having to worry about where the money is going to come from. And inflation is all around us, it's impacting us on an ongoing basis. The other area is stock market volatility. The market goes up and down. Now, most of us and most Americans only remember when the markets go up. They don't remember when the markets go down. And by the way, a market crash, except for the bull market that we had that lasted almost 12 years, which we just went through and finished in January of this year. But most bull markets, most bear markets actually happen every 5 years. And when they do happen, the average loss is about 39.5%, or just say 39%, between 39 and 40%. Normally, they last about a year and a half. And it takes anywhere between 5 to 6 years for the average investor at an 8% rate of return to recover that 40% loss that they suffered during that market crash. By the way, if you suffer a loss of 40% this year, it would take a 67% rate of return to get you back to where you were at before you lost that 40%. So going downhill and losing money in the market is really easy. Trying to gain it all back is very, very difficult, especially when you can no longer afford for those retirement assets to just sit there and wait for the market to recover because you're no longer employed, you're no longer generating any income, and now you depend on your assets to generate that additional income for you and your family. So you have to take the money out whether you want to or not, and whether the account is losing value every single year due to a stock market correction. And the same thing happens with interest rate volatility. Interest rates are very low today. Now, they were not that way in the 1990s. I remember clients of mine that would have $1 million portfolio in their retirement, and then they would put that money in a CD, very little risk, and then they would get 5.5 to 6%. So they would generate between $50,000 and $60,000 a year of retirement income out of a CD. Well, you try doing that today and see what kind of rate of return you're going to get. Maybe 1.5, perhaps 2. So that same $1 million portfolio is going to generate $20,000 of income for you and your family. The other question that is prevalent when I do a tactical retirement blueprint is not only the sequencing of returns, but what assets are you going to be invading first for retirement? Are you going to start drawing down on your qualified plan assets, your 401ks, your IRAs, your pensions, your 403bs? Or are you going to start taking money out of your Social Security benefits earlier rather than later? And the answer to that is it depends. It depends on your individual situation. Now, if you've done fairly well financially and you have a robust 401k or IRA or pension program, then you may be able to afford allowing your Social Security benefits to continue to grow tax or to grow on a deferred basis from a distribution standpoint until age 70. Because obviously you'll get the bigger benefit at that point in time. And that's also going to benefit your surviving spouse if you happen to have a death during retirement, because if you are the top earner in your family and your Social Security benefit is the higher one, then your spouse, your surviving spouse, is going to step into your shoes and take that Social Security benefit as opposed to theirs. So that would be a win-win for them. So you also have to determine, if I don't have a lot of assets, does it make sense for me to start taking Social Security early and not allow it to grow? Because at the point in time that you're going to die, then your surviving spouse is going to take a lower Social Security benefit. Is that going to be adequate for him or for her? So these are the discussions that you need to consider. Also, if you have done fairly well and now you have a sizable retirement account, then it might make sense for you to delay taking your Social Security benefits so you can start to take distributions out of those retirement accounts and bring them to a level that is going to be an adequate level and an optimum level for you and your family. So that way, when you finally start taking distributions out of your Social Security benefits, you don't have to pay taxes on those Social Security benefits, because once you do the provisional income calculation, which is part of the Tactical Retirement Blueprint, then I'm going to be able to tell you whether you're going to pay taxes on your Social Security benefits or not. If you have not done proper tax planning, chances are 85% of your Social Security benefits are going to be taxed in retirement. And that's not a good thing, because that means that you're going to get less money out of Social Security, plus you're going to have to pay the Medicare premium. And that's going to force you to take more and more money out of your retirement assets in order to plug that hole that the Social Security taxation left for you and your family. And therefore, you're invading more and more of your assets, so you're definitely more than likely going to run out of money before you run out of life. So the Tactical Retirement Blueprint is going to bring just about everything that I have talked to you about to the forefront and much more. It is a tremendous tool that I use with my clients on an annual basis. And I use with each and every one of my new clients, because I wouldn't do it any other way. But it's a tactical tool that is going to allow each and every one of you that embarks upon creating a tactical retirement blueprint for you and your family, is going to give you the ability to take a look at your finances, not only through a microscope, but most important, through a telescope. Because the views are totally different. And when you look at your financial needs, your goals and objectives, and when you look at the potential risk that you may be putting your family through and putting yourself through, you will realize that when you look at your financial world through a telescope, you're going to be able to see the whole spectrum. You're going to be able to identify, if I make a move on this side of the ledger, what kind of an impact it's going to have on the other side, and is that something that I'm okay with, or is it suitable? Am I willing to make that move, or am I willing to go, or do I have to go in a different direction? So when I get asked often, Bert, am I ready for retirement, which should be the most prevalent question that you should be asking your financial advisor. Most of the time, you're not going to like the answer you're going to get, but not knowing the answer or not getting the answer, it doesn't mean that the problem is going to go away, because the problem is not going to go away. It's going to continue to get, bigger and bigger as time goes on. So the sooner that you can start to address each and every one of those issues, the better off you're going to be, not only in order to maximize your successful retirement, but also be able to provide a seamless transition of your retirement world to your surviving spouse and your family based on your specific desires at that point in time. So for those of you that may be interested in learning more about my Tactical Retirement Blueprint, please feel free to give me a call. You can call me at area code 786-766-1042. You can also send me an email at Bert, B-E-R-T, at bertsalazar.com, BERTSALAZAR.com. And always remember that my goal for you and for your family is to kind of help you change the way that you see things, because when you change the way that you see things, the things that you see change. So once again, thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time today, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Have a good time and have a good day.